Over this journey that we're concluding today in personal transformation, I've tried to share with you some of my own personal journey, things that went well, things that didn't go well, things that were a surprise, different elements that helped to transform my life using these spiritual principles and tools. In our first week, we took a look at the detours that God uses to get us on track. Many of us kind of have a plan in our mind of the way things should go, the way our life should go. And sometimes it goes that way, and a lot of times there are surprises along the way, detours that kind of seem to take us away from what we had intended or what we thought was supposed to happen, only to discover that if we pay attention, they're usually redirecting us and getting us back on a better path. Then we took a look at the vision that God uses to get us started. Most of us who've been in metaphysics for any length of time are familiar with the Bible verse, where there is no vision, the people perish. And we know in our teaching how important it is to have a sense of vision, a picture of what it is we are trying to move toward, even though there may be detours on the way of getting there. To hold that vision solidly, but to hold the path, the way that we get there lightly. And then we looked at the idea of the pain that God or spirit or life uses to wake us up. We talk in metaphysics about the whisper, but we also talk about the cosmic 2x4. And some of us have been pretty familiar with the cosmic 2x4, right? The thing that whops us up along the side of the head when we haven't been paying attention to the subtle whispers of our soul or of spirit within saying, no, make this change, do this, don't do that. And when we don't pay attention to the whisper, it gets louder and louder, and sometimes it feels like a whop up the side of the head. And that can be painful, right? But in that pain, it's usually a choice point to wake up. When things hurt so much, or when we are so dissatisfied or feel so empty inside, there's a part of us that says there's got to be a better way than this. And as soon as we make a statement like that, as soon as the soul speaks that kind of truth, that's the journey of waking up, of deciding that things are going to be different. We looked as well at the people that God uses to move us along. And sometimes it's the people that are our best friends, our partners, our cheerleaders that really encourage us along the way. And thank God that we have people like that, right? Thank God we have people like that in our lives. But sometimes the people that God uses to move us along are the people that I fondly call sandpaper to my soul. The ones that, they rub me, not the wrong way, actually. Spiritually, they're rubbing me the right way to smooth any rough edges or help me to grow maybe in ways that I didn't know that I needed to grow into the good that I really want to experience. And then we looked at the timing that God uses to bring our good. I know that I'm not the only one in this room or the only one online that tends to want things right now, that I've got kind of a timeline and I'd like to see them happen this way. And sometimes they do, but a lot of times they don't. And part of what I think happens is we live a few more years and live through a few more experiences and deepen into our spiritual understanding and growth, is that we begin to loosen up a little bit on our trying to control things, on insisting on our timing, and opening up to trusting that there is a divine timing, there is a divine unfolding. If you ever watch roses in a garden, you'll notice that they don't all open at exactly the same time, right? Some of them are a little bit slower to open. Some of them are faster to open. There's a timing that's right, I suppose, for each individual flower. Just like I believe there's a timing that is right for each of us in our soul's journey. And then we looked last week at the challenges that God that life uses to deepen our faith. Where and how else do we really grow in our capacity to be people of faith if we're not forced to exercise that very thing as we face the challenges that will inevitably come our way? Just because we happen to be in what I think is one of the finest, best, most logical, most sound spiritual practices and teachings that exist, just because we're steeped in this and practicing it, does not mean that we're going to have a life absent of problems, absent of challenges. They're going to befall every one of us. But what's different about us as we practice these teachings is we will always find that we are in a much better position to meet them and to overcome them. And so today, as we wrap this journey of personal transformation up, I wanted us to take a look at the idea of victories, the victories that God, that Spirit, that life uses to keep us inspired. Think about it. Few people would keep trying if they never had a win, right? What does winning do for us? What does having a success do for us? It motivates us, right? When we've accomplished, when we've accomplished a little, we feel like we can accomplish more. Each win, no matter how tiny it might be, helps to, I've got a frog in my throat, helps to encourage us to keep on going. The victories that life, that our own journey uses to keep us inspired. Henry Ward Beecher said, "Victories that are easy are cheap. Those only are worth having which come as a result of hard fighting." Would you not agree that there's some wisdom to that? I don't think that victories that are easy come cheap. I think they're still victories. But the ones where we've really had to work to make them happen, those build capacity in us. I often say when I am supporting people that I love or supporting friends or members of our community that are working through challenges, that when they overcome those challenges, nothing and no one can take that victory from them. They have grown in a way that is an imprint in their soul, in the very fiber of their being. I want you to think about some of the victories that you've had to date. So I'm going to pause for just a moment. I'm not going to ask you to share them with me, but I want you to think of some of the victories, some of the wins that you've had. I imagine that some of them have been in the personal realm. Some might have been in your work realm. But every single one of us in this room, every single one of us online, has experienced numerous victories. We tend not to remember them enough. We tend to move on, I think, rather quickly to the next thing that we want to accomplish. But it's so important for us to remember the victories that we have had. I think of some of the victories that we as a spiritual community have had. The very fact that we made it through the pandemic, that's a victory. Can I have an amen to that? Amen. We made it through the pandemic. That's a huge, huge victory. The beautiful facility that we get to call our home and have called our home for a long time now is a huge win. I think of the greenhouses that our community, that some of you helped to build throughout Peru. I think of the microfinance loans that we made to women in Guatemala who couldn't even sign their name to those loans, but signed those loans with an X. I think of the racial equity work that this community has done that still lingers in the minds and hearts of the people that we serve, and that goes far beyond just this community to the other New Thought ministries and ministers that we have impacted. I think of the work that we did years ago with the Department of Peace and how we stood as a community for what can we do? And we still need to stand there now. For how do we stand in peace? How do we articulate what our spiritual values are to see them manifest more clearly, more permanently in our world so that the world works better for everyone? Every kind of victory, whether as a community or a family or an individual that we've had, is evidence, I think, of God in action through each and every one of us. How about you? What are the victories that you've enjoyed? Some of you may have as a victory your sobriety. Some of you may have as your victory having gone back to school and gotten a degree, or going into business for yourself, or raising independent, healthy kids. I don't know what your victories are, but I hope you never, ever, ever forget them. Never forget them. It's what helps us to let the light of God, the light of Spirit shine through us even more brilliantly. The leader, the orator, the writer Booker T. Washington said, "Success is to be measured not so much by the position one has reached in life as by the obstacles which he has overcome while trying to succeed." When I asked you a moment ago to think about some of your own victories, when you did that, did you also get back in touch with some of the things you had to overcome to achieve that victory? Nod your head if you did. Right? There may have been a time as you were working toward that victory, working toward that breakthrough, that you might have felt too small to meet that challenge, too small to meet that obstacle. And yet there was something in you, and that something still exists, by the way. There was that something in you that kept you motivated to go, right? And you won, whatever that was, even if nobody else knows what that was. You do. You do. I remember when, at one phase when we were building our church, when we were trying to do everything involved to be able to buy a home of our own, I remember talking with one of my ministerial colleagues who's best known for her work in prosperity. Some of you are familiar with Edwene Gaines. And I remember sharing with Edwene some of the difficulties I was feeling and some of the fear that I had about it and the doubt that I had about it. And I remember her saying to me, "Wendy, you think you're building a church?" And I thought, well, yeah, that's what I think I'm doing. She says, "No, you're not. You're building yourself." I've never forgotten those words. Never forgotten those words. I think the same could be true, the same could be said of each of us in regard to whatever it is that we are trying to accomplish in our life. You know, to be the best whatever, to be the most loving person, to be the best teacher, to build the most successful company, to be the strongest social activist, whatever it may be, the outer thing is almost an excuse for the soul to grow. The outer thing is like an excuse for the soul to grow. Because in order to achieve that thing that we have not yet achieved, what do we have to do? We have to grow. There are things we will have to learn, or changes we will have to make, or capacities we will have to build in order to be successful. Edwene was absolutely right. I thought I was building a building or building a church. It wasn't. It was about building me. Let me tell you, I think it's easier to build a building. I think it's much easier to build a building than building oneself, because we come face to face with the things in us that are good and strong and capable, and we also come face to face with those areas that we fall short, the things that we don't know, the mistakes that we've made, the things that are, I'm going to use the word wrong, but I don't mean it in a black and white sense. The things that are wrong or incomplete in us, we come face to face with that. That's not an easy picture to look at, right? But it's only when we can look at it and see it that we are able to do something about it, that we are able to change about it. I want to share with you a few ideas that I think help us to stay motivated in this trajectory of growth in our lives. Though I'm not a football fan, and if you've been around here any length of time, you know that I don't know a whole heck of a lot of it, and I'm still every year have to do some forgiveness work when I know that football impacts Sunday attendance and stuff like that. I haven't manifested or perfected that forgiveness yet, but I do like this quote from Vince Lombardi, the football coach. Winning isn't everything, but wanting to win is. Wanting to win. Winning isn't everything, but wanting to win, that desire of the heart, that desire of the soul for something a little better in your life than what you've had right now. That's how the world gets moved forward. That's how the world gets better. As each of us are paying attention to what it is that we would like to be better in our life, and we work toward that, not only do we reap the benefit of that result, but we inspire others to believe that that can be true for them as well. Would you not say that that's kind of like a double win? I think it is. I'm grateful that there are people in my life near and far that have accomplished so much more than I have, that I can look at them and be inspired by them and know that if they can do it, I can too. My path might look different. I may have different obstacles and my pace might not be the same as theirs. But if they can achieve that breakthrough, if they can achieve that success, then I can too. And I know that to whatever degree I've accomplished something, that in some way that's an inspiration to those around me. A win-win, wanting to win, wanting to succeed, wanting to accomplish. As I read in the quote earlier, almost every successful person begins with two beliefs. Two beliefs. One, the future can be better than the past. Yes, the future can be better than the past, and I have the power to make it so. Do you believe you have the power to make it so? Do you believe your future can be better than what it is right now? Yeah? Online as well? And do you believe that you have the power within you to help move that along? That's what really, really matters. That's what really, really, and if you don't think you have the power to move that along, stick around here and find yourself a spiritual buddy, a spiritual friend to know that for you when you begin to doubt it. I've shared this with you before, but I'm going to share it again because it fits. My friend, the late Reverend Jack Boland, who built one of the most successful Unity ministries outside of Detroit, Michigan, and Warren, Michigan. In the early days, I don't know what it was I was struggling with, but I was losing a lot of confidence and a lot of faith. And I remember Jack kind of taking me by the shoulders like this and looking, and he was a big man, and taking me like this. And he says, "Do you believe that you can do this?" I said, "Well, I don't know." And he says, "Do you believe that I believe you can do this?" And I said, "Well, sure, you're Jack Boland." He said, "Then ride on my belief. Then ride on my belief. Then ride on my belief." Have you ever had somebody in your life that really, really believed in you when you didn't believe in you? Nod your head if you have. Did that make a positive difference? Did that motivate you even a little bit to try? Yeah. There are times that we really need that in our lives. There are times that we really need somebody to do what Jack did to me. Do you believe that I believe you can do it? Yes. Well, then ride on my belief. So here are a few additional reminders besides wanting to win. Dream and work. I don't like the form of metaphysics that seems to just say, affirm it, visualize it, see it, believe it, and it will happen. It's missing something. It's called getting up off your affirmations and doing something. That's the missing part. Otherwise, it's this airy-fairy, I'll just leave it there, version of our teaching. It's not an either or, it's a both and. So it's the dreaming, it's having the vision, whatever that is, but also getting up off your meditation cushion, getting up off your affirmations, and taking whatever is the next step that you need to take. Steve Ross, who was the founder, the CEO of Time Warner, received a powerful bit of advice from his father as his father was making his transition. And this is the advice he received. He said, as a teenager, I was summoned to my father's deathbed to receive this advice. There are those who work all day, those who dream all day, and those who spend an hour dreaming before setting to work and fulfilling those dreams. Go into the third category because there's virtually no competition. So the combination, dream and work, right? Second idea is to refuse to give in to discouragement. Refuse to give in to discouragement. Say that with me. Refuse to give in to discouragement. That's true with what we're facing in the world today. We must, especially as spiritually minded, practicing, conscious beings, we must refuse to give in to discouragement. We have got to believe that there's a path forward. We've got to reduce the negativity and focus on what we can do, to be the encouragers, to speak for what we want to bring forth. There's so much negativity, so much discouragement. Football teams have cheerleaders, right? Why do you think they have cheerleaders? Not just because they're really cute, which they are, but to motivate the team, right? To be a force of encouragement. To be a force of it. So don't give way to discouragement. I found this little story in my files. I'll share it with you. The devil, we don't believe in the devil in metaphysics, okay? It's a story. The devil, according to legend, once advertised his tools for sale at a public auction. When the prospective buyers assembled, there was one oddly shaped tool which was labeled "not for sale." Asked to explain why, the devil answered, I can spare my other tools, but I cannot spare this one. It is the most useful implement I have. It is called discouragement. And with it, I can work my way into hearts otherwise inaccessible. When I get this tool into a man's heart, the way is open to plant anything else there I desire. Think for a moment about how you feel when you feel discouraged. Do you feel open and excited, or do you feel shut down, protective, and you step back, right? Probably the latter, certainly not the former. So we need to refuse to succumb to discouragement. How do you do that? You might have to turn the news off, or at least put yourself on a diet of it for a little bit. I'm not suggesting don't pay attention at all. Only you know when enough is enough. You might have to make sure that you balance your relationships. If you only have toxic, critical relationships, if you only have naysayers in your life, you may have to really work to cultivate making sure you bring in some positive influences. You might need to ask those naysayers, can you hold back a little bit? To speak for what you want, but we need to be the gatekeepers in our own mind. We know this in metaphysics. What we allow to stay ruminating in our minds forms neural pathways that become more and more solid and more difficult then to transcend. And just as we can be on a negative cycle over and over with our thinking or allowing others' input to weigh too heavily in our mind, we can choose to reverse that. There's nobody else thinking your thoughts but you. That's a scary thought, isn't it? We need to be, this is building on the same idea, we need to be our own cheerleader at times, to remind ourselves, that's why I asked you earlier, to think about some of the victories that you've had. To be your own cheerleader, especially if you're feeling discouraged. There have been periods of my life that in order to be my own cheerleader, I have gone back to the rooms in which this church started. I've gone back to the Torrey Pines Inn room. I've gone back to the tiny little room in the basement of the Hotel La Jolla to just remind myself of some of the journey. I don't know what a similar parallel is for you, but whatever it is, it's important that you are your own cheerleader, especially if you don't have enough people in your life right now acting as that cheerleader for you. I like this quote from Chief Justice Earl Warren. "I always turn to the sports pages first, which record people's accomplishments. The front page is nothing but man's failures." Interesting, right? What would be the sports pages in your life? You know, maybe we write gratitude journals, right? Many of us do. And for many of us, this would be kind of a twist on that idea. We think of being grateful for and about things in our lives. But what if we added, one or two little lines reminding us of the things we have already overcome, the successes we've already had, no matter how tiny they are. What was that quote I shared with you earlier about, I don't have it in here now, the one about treating every win as if it was like the Super Bowl? Right? Of not from an egotistical, boastful way, but from a way that empowers us to remember just the tremendous potential and capability that still exists in each and every one of us. To mark that journey, to savor the mini journeys along the way, the MINI journeys along the way, to savor those. If you are near the beginning of something that you're wanting, a positive change you're wanting to make in your life, or a goal that you have, a new goal that you have. If you're in the beginning stages of moving toward that, I think it's super important to acknowledge and take note of any mini victory along the way. I was thinking as I was writing about that this morning, I was thinking about the success of the 12-step recovery program. And thinking about how at the front end of sobriety, as I understand it, at the front end of the journey of sobriety, the tokens that are given more frequently, like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, then it jumps, I think, to 6 months, and then I think it jumps to a year. Why do they do 30, 60, 90? I don't know for a fact, but my guess is you gotta have the encouragement as you're building the new habits. We need to be reminded of the steps that we're making so that we stay motivated to stay on the journey. A person that has 100 pounds to lose, if they're only focusing on the 100 pounds to lose instead of the 2 pounds that they lost in the first 2 weeks, is going to have a really hard time. Would you not agree? Because the great big goal seems so far out of reach. Doesn't mean we're not going to reach it. But we're going to reach it more likely and with greater joy and ease along the way if we never forget to acknowledge the many victories along the way. And then the last little piece I would add is how valuable it can be to study your own wins. Take that in for a moment. To study and kind of analyze your own wins. So when you've accomplished something, have you ever taken the time to reflect not only on the fact that you accomplished it, but why did you accomplish it? What worked for you? What things did you put in place that brought about that victory? I know that I've pretty practiced in analyzing my failures and trying to learn from them, which I think is an important thing to do. Nod your head if you've done that as well, right? You know, you have a big blunder, you flop on something, you're not successful. You step back, you might have to kind of lick your wounds for a bit and kind of catch your breath, and you might have a short pity party or whatever your process is. But if you're a conscious being, probably what you will also do is try to analyze, well, why did I fail? Why did this not work the way I thought it was going to? And that is a good thing to do. But I think it's also beneficial to do that same process when we've succeeded, whatever that success is, whatever that breakthrough has been, because you're harvesting your own wisdom. You're harvesting your own knowledge. You're harvesting your own process, which then you can repeat again. You can build on again. So quick recap, keep dreaming and working. You were quiet, but you got it. Keep dreaming and working. Don't give in to discouragement. Don't give in to discouragement. Be your own cheerleader. Savor the many victories along the way, and study and learn from your victories as much as you have studied and learned from your failures. Namaste.